Somewhere, deep in the Ozark woods, lurks the two people everyone tries to avoid the most. If you're not careful, they may find you before you find them. Okay, we're recording. Welcome back. Hey, this is January 1st. It's a new year. Starting with a clean slate. Everything's looking positive. Positive mental attitude, PMA. Positive mental attitude, not putting up with Marion's attitude. It's positive.
Punch men in the abdomen.
Do what?
Punch men in the abdomen.
It's just like PMS.
I don't suffer from PMS.
That's,
You do.
No, it's putting up with men's shit.
That's you. You suffer from PMS.
How do I suffer from PMS?
You act like a female on her period once a month.
Well, I never.
Moody
I never
and just irritated, just irritable. Somebody blink at you wrong and you ready to go from 0 to 1,000 in 2.2 seconds.
Okay, I never denied that.
Oh. You just recently admitted that.
What?
That you PMS.
Well, yeah, because I self-evaluate. I finally got to that point of evaluation where I realized, okay, this is the next thing.
Yeah.
I was busy working on other things. That was the next on my.
No,
I
you were
finally
in denial.
Huh?
You were in denial.
No, I wasn't.
Yeah, you are.
I wasn't feeling Egyptianish.
I didn't say denial. I said denial.
But yeah, everybody rags. Everybody's got their time of the month. I don't care who you are, male or female, you got your time of the month. Well, some people's months last longer than others.
Your month lasts 365 days.
No, I'm not that bad. There's a couple of days a year that I'm good.
Okay, 360.
Okay.
It's 5 days out of the year. That you're not PMSing. We need to increase that number. Need to increase it.
Increase it. So that's our New Year's resolution.
That's yours.
We get 6 good days this year.
No, you need to give up more than them. More than one. You need to give up more than one. You need to give up more than one.
Well, that's baby steps.
You too old to be a baby.
Anyway, let's watch Mike Rowe.
Recently, I produced 2 short videos with Mike Rowe, former host of the TV show Dirty Jobs. But Rowe had more thoughtful things to say about pandemic restrictions, the nature of work, and the push to forgive student loans. Here's our full interview, starting with that demand for student loan forgiveness.
Yeah, funny word, forgiveness. Back to the Bible. Sure, I'll forgive them, but why do I have to pay them back? I mean, we all make mistakes.
They're in trouble, he says.
They're having to make choices between paying their student loan and paying their rent.
I know guys who worked hard to get a construction operation up and running. And those guys right now are struggling like everybody else. And some of those guys have $40,000 and $50,000 automobiles that they had to finance in order to make their business work. They had to take out a loan on a big old diesel truck. Now, why shouldn't we take care of the loan on that truck if we're going to take care of a loan for a degree? Both are tools that we tell the individual they should go ahead and invest in order to make a go of their chosen vocation. But why would we forgive the cost of a degree and not the cost of a lease payment? if the tool in question is equally vital to the job at hand.
The biggest reason is, like I said, because the degree is a one-time payment. That tool never expires, never wears out.
That's only if that person goes and gets an associate's or a bachelor's. If they go for their master's and their doctorate, no, that's two more. That theory only works if that person goes to a 2-year college for an associate degree, or they go to a 4-year college and only want a bachelor's degree.
What are you talking about?
The loan, you said the loan, paying back, loan forgiveness is a one-time thing.
No, the purchase of an education is a one-time purchase. Once you buy an education, that education is never worn out, never breaks, never goes away. It's always up there as long as the person is still cognitively efficient. If he uses it or not, that education is up there and is always available. You buy a truck, that truck has a life expectancy. It will wear out. Which has more long-term innate value? A $50,000 degree or a $50,000 truck?
Degree does.
Okay, so the values are not the same. So to equate to the if you forgive the degree, which is a one-time payment that will last that person forever, if you want to do the equivalent to the person who doesn't go to college, then you need to supply him with an equivalent tool and make the payments forever because you supplied the degree forever. Even though it was a one, so the degree is the smarter payment. I would rather give my child $50,000 and get an education that will last them for life than to give them a $50,000 car. Because the car within a few years is going to be worthless and then they have nothing. It's just like these athletes that go out and get, well, like that one that, he said he had his first year's that college football player. He expected to be drafted in the first round and thought that he was going to be making millions of dollars. Well, as soon as he found out that he was in the draft and there was teams that were interested in him, he went out and started spending money. Well, he was drafted in the second round, only ended up with like $850,000 for his contract. He'd already spent that. He expected more, but he had already spent that $850,000.
That was plumb fucking stupid.
Okay, but it's the same thing. He was given $850,000, and it lasted him less than a year. And education is less than $850,000 and lasts a lifetime. So I love Mike Rowe to death, and he's a very intelligent man, but his comparisons aren't the same. He's comparing apples and oranges. So to follow his comparison, the government should be buying that business owner a new truck every 5 years to keep them in business, because the government paid for that degree that's keeping that accountant. Okay, an accountant goes to college, the government pays for their college education, gives it to him for free. Now you have an accounting degree, you go out and you open up an accounting firm and you become a multimillionaire. It costs the government one payment of $50,000, and now you're a multimillionaire. You've got all these employees. You opened H&R Block, and you've got all of these employees, and all of these people are putting money back into the system, and they're collecting tax, and and it costs the government $50,000. Or you're a plumber. You go to college and you get a degree in plumbing. And now the government says to help you out, or no, you don't get a degree. You're a tradesman. You work your way up, and you go to the government and say, well, I didn't go to college. I want to open up a plumbing business. So instead of giving me $50,000 to go to college, give me $50,000 to buy a van so I can haul my tools and stuff and go from job to job. And then the government says, okay, I will give you the $50,000, but how long is it going to take you to build that $50,000 up to where I'm getting a return on my investment? Well, if he's a plumber, well, it's going to take more than a few years, and that van's going to burn out. So now he needs another van. You might as well give him another 50 because you've already invested in him once. See, it's a never-ending process, because the things that you're buying for this individual to help him be successful are transient objects. It's not knowledge and stuff that will stick with them forever. You know, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the difference is. Is there some kind of equitable way of doing it? I don't know. But just to come.
Okay, so the loan forgiveness that they're talking about, student debt forgiveness, are they talking student debt completely or just up until your bachelor's degree?
They're wanting all of their student debt forgiven.
No.
But why should you forgive any of it?
Exactly. But I'm just saying, if they so happen to do this, stop at an associate's or a bachelor's. If you want to go beyond that, that's out of your pocket. I'm not going to pay for you to be a doctorate, to get your doctorate. No, I'll pay for the bachelor's.
But why would you pay for a...
I'm just saying, if the government does do the loan forgiveness.
But see, where can... The government can't draw a line. Because you cannot deny benefits. Okay, the government says, I will train you to be employable. If you want to be an accountant, it will cost this amount of money. You want to be a brain surgeon, it will cost this amount of money. Where does the government draw the line on, we won't train you to do that? They need brain surgeons just as much as they need accountants. So why is it fair for the accountant to be trained for their lifelong profession, which is worthy, and we need accountants, but we need brain surgeons too? We don't need as many brain surgeons as we need accountants.
Okay.
So why would it be fair for
okay. I understand, but okay, to get to them brain surgeons, they go to school, they do their first 4 years. And then they got 4 to 8 more years? 4 years to be a doctor, and then 4 more if they want to specialize.
Well, it depends on the specialty.
Right, so 4 to 8 more years.
Yeah.
Okay. My thing is, I agree with the giving you a helping hand, but not a handout.
Okay, but if you trained the accountant,
that was okay. The
that
accountant,
was a handout.
No. Oh,
if you paid their entire schooling, that was a handout.
we see it differently, but okay.
The brain surgeon is ineffective and is not employable until he achieves all of the education that he needs. A brain surgeon does not exist without education.
That is true, but what I'm saying is, I'm the government, okay? Here I will pay for 4 years of college. That's it. Anything beyond that, you have to pay for. I will pay for 4 years of college. Make your choice.
Okay, now we have no brain surgeons in the country whatsoever because
if we had brain surgeons before I said I'd pay for 4 years, we'll have brain surgeons after I said I'd pay for 4 years.
No, because all of the education is paid for by the government, and when people can see that they can get a job and have the government pay for it and have all of the subsidies, the way they're wanting it done, the free market system no longer exists. What I am saying, you're saying here's the line.
What I am saying is the left will tell you you cannot draw a line. Once you give one person this benefit, you have to give that benefit to everybody. So 4 years, is it fair for a person to, under your plan, one person wants to go to cosmetology school and only spends 2 years in college and gets an associate's degree and gets a job and prove that they're beneficial to society? Why should the government spend more money on a different person and make this person an accountant or make this person a lawyer? Why does not that person that wants to be a cosmetologist still qualify for? So you're in your book, we will pay you up to $100,000 to get a bachelor's degree in whatever. The cosmetologist will come up and say, okay, it's only costing me $10,000 for my degree. I want the other $90,000.
Okay, this no different than a Pell Grant. It's no different than a Pell Grant.
Everybody qualifies for a Pell Grant.
Okay, it's exactly. It's no different than Pell Grant has a cap limit. They will only give so much to an individual. It is a cap limit.
But
it is the same as a Pell.
No, it's not.
Okay.
It's not the same because there are other programs to go in along with that. The Pell Grant is not a standalone fix-all. It is one of many components. Just like an
But that is federally funded, correct?
Yes. Are there other components that go along with that Pell Grant that are designed to work in conjunction with one another?
Student loans. Student loans.
You're not seeing the picture. You're not. I agree with you, but I am giving you an argument that you cannot come up with an argument against. So you, right now, you are unable to build a platform that will support your opinion because I can tear it out from under you using the left's philosophy. You have not developed an argument against that. That's what I'm trying to instill in you. You keep, well, there's a line. The left is telling you there cannot be a line. We are losing the war with the left. And until the right can come up and everybody can stand their ground and in unison say, this is the reason why, and explain it logically, we will never win. Because you say, we will pay up to a bachelor's degree. 4 years. That's it. They are going to tell, because they want a socialist society. They will tell you, if you do not pay for brain surgeons, there will be no brain surgeons. And then they will set the system up to where there will be no brain surgeons because nobody can afford to go to school for those extra 8 years because the cost is totally out. They can't afford it. There is no way. They can't.
And that right there, to me, would have been a compromise between the left and the right. But since they want to go the route that you're saying, then I would stand my ground. No.
But you stand your ground, but you're not winning.
No, we're not paying for nobody.
Okay, but you see, you haven't won. You've lost, but you've lost with your dignity, but you've still lost. You've let them walk over you and just, because you just, no. That's what we were talking about earlier. You haven't learned to play the game on training people to think the way you want them to think. You are up there with the baseball bat saying, you will do this my way, or I'm going to club you in the head, or I'm going to cut you off. So you've drawn a line of animosity. I agree with what you're saying, but there's a route to achieve your goal without beating people over the head with a baseball bat. And on top of it, making it them think that it was their idea and they're all for it and on gung ho.
This is why I wouldn't make a good politician.
That's right.
I am not manipulative.
No, it's not manipulating, it's training. Do you train your children or do you manipulate them?
I teach my children.
Okay.
Taught my children.
Okay.
Still teaching because
You're still teaching them.
I just said that.
You know, the left they're childish in thought. They're pure emotions. They're like 2-year-olds. They have to be taught. Well, you can't teach them with a baseball bat. You have to go in and use. It's like molding Play-Doh.
You manipulate Play-Doh.
Yeah. No, you mold it. Manipulating is to get something to go against its will, which means there is no structural support to it, and it will fall apart once you remove the forces of manipulation. When you mold something, you get something to react upon its own natural instincts and strengths. You build those instincts and strengths up, and they can stand on. You mold clay. You don't manipulate it. Because if you manipulate it, when you walk away, it collapses. When you mold it, then you're using its own strengths to make it conform to what the desired results are. Mm-hmm. So you mold people. You don't when you manipulate them, you get your goal, you walk away, and you don't care what happens afterwards. You manipulate somebody to get a task accomplished. You don't, once that task is done, you don't care about the interpersonal relationship afterwards. You manipulated them to get the task done, or you manipulated them to get money, or you manipulated them into a contract, and once the contract is signed, oh well, they're stuck. But if you mold them and get them to move it into the same direction, you don't have to manipulate because they're doing it willingly and they're using their own strength to support the desired result. So that's how it's sustainable. That's how you get sustainable results. As you mold, you don't manipulate. The left wants to manipulate by passing laws and mandates and forcing you to do stuff. If they were to do things properly and manipulate and mold, not manipulate, but mold public opinion and mold public thought to go into the direction that they want, then everybody would be doing it willingly and you wouldn't have to have mandates. So that's the difference. The left tries to manipulate, the right tries to mold. We're trying to mold society into a thought process and social behaviors that fit a desired pattern that will reach desired results. The left wants to force you with laws and mandates to conform to something that's not natural to your behavior. That's the difference. You want to manipulate. I want to mold. That's my dissertation for now. How did we get from
This
schooling
makes no
to
sense. The reason, of course, is because we've got our big, thick thumb on the scale. And for some reason, we think a tool that looks like a diploma is more laudable, more aspirational, somehow more important than that big piece of metal out in the driveway that allows the guy in my example to not only keep his family fed, but to build the homes that you and I are sitting in right now. It's a value judgment on the one hand. It's not about forgiving anything. And there's also the moral argument. I'm sorry, I get it. Everybody who's behind the 8 ball is struggling right now in some way, shape, or form. But many millions of people sacrificed a lot to pay off their college loans. If you're going to pay off these but not them, then persuade me. If you're going to argue that way, Mr. President, I'm curious to know, how is college ever going to become more affordable if we simply pay off the debts? I mean, the cost of a four-year degree has increased faster over the last 30 years than any other valuable thing in the history of our country. Faster than food, faster than energy, faster than real estate, faster even than healthcare. The cost of a four-year degree has risen exponentially. And I think part of the reason that's happened is because we've put such pressure on kids to borrow such vast amounts. And when you do that, it just seems obvious that the universities would be able to charge as much as they want. And not necessarily for an education, maybe it's for a stadium, or maybe it's for a, you know, a better student union or a better restaurant. I don't know.
What?
I just know that if that cost is ultimately going to be borne by people who didn't send their kids there or who didn't attend themselves, something's fundamentally unfair.
And you said, why would that be? Why would you forgive the college loan but not the loan of the guy running the construction business? I imagine it's because the guys who go to college talk better. They participate in the public debate. The people who run the construction business are less likely to do that. And we have the bites on TV. They're articulate. A single mother who owes $200,000 in student loans.
I am here to fight, no matter how long it takes, for full debt cancellation and an education system that treats us with dignity and as equal. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I am seeking justice. The only justice is full debt cancellation.
When people say it that way, it's persuasive.
Is it? It struck me as kind of self-involved, kind of myopic. Like, if that's persuasive, why stop with forgiving my debts? Why not start sending me money beyond that? I mean, I just don't know how the argument goes. Look, I get it. There's the snowflake culture, right? And we read about it all of the time. And the millennials and the snowflakes, they're a fun and easy target with their safe spaces and all of these other things that have led to a whole series of expectations that ultimately result in a woman like that saying a thing like that. That kind of expectation, that kind of entitlement is an extraordinary shift from where we were 40 or 50 years ago. But where the snowflakes come from, you know, we're the clouds from which the snowflakes fell. And part of this blows back on us, Boomer, right?
Why? What did we do?
We watched it. We watched it happen. We let shop class be slowly arbitraged out of high schools. We let the myths and misperceptions and stigmas and stereotypes that make people sneer at careers in heating, air conditioning, plumbing, and electric. We let that happen. I'm old enough to remember in 1978, the push for college was extraordinary. We needed, back in the 60s and 70s, we needed more people going into higher education. We needed more advanced degrees. College needed a push, and it got one. Unfortunately, the push for college came at the expense of every other form of education. And so we wound up trying to make a more persuasive case for a university experience by telling people if they didn't do that, they'd wind up turning a wrench for the rest of their life for some other godforsaken vocational consolation prize. It wasn't long after that before shop class was taken out of high school. And of course, we didn't just take it out overnight. The first thing we did was look at the vocational arts, which is what we used to call it. We took the art out of it. And that just left vocation, which isn't terribly sexy. And then we knocked vocation down to VOTEC. And then VOTEC became some acronym. And then it turned into shop. And then we walked it out back behind the barn and shot it. That's how we got shop class out of high school. And ever since, we have denied millions of kids an opportunity to just see to optically experience what work looks like, what half the workforce actually looks like. That's where the stigmas and the stereotypes and the myths and the misperceptions began to take hold, where all of these jobs became stuff that other people's kids did. And once we lost the enthusiasm for that kind of work, everything else, not to oversimplify it, but most everything else followed suit. You've got $1.7 trillion in student.
Well, see, and a lot of it also went back to the left's desire, because manual labor was stigmatized as being lesser than cognitive labor. So they wanted to get away from the manufacturing, send that overseas. And now what we produce in this country is TikTok movies and YouTube channels. We've got more millionaires. We've got 1 million millionaires in this country, and a significant portion of them are not producing of anything other than entertainment. They're not producing toothbrushes. They're not producing houses. They're not producing the cups we drink, the anything, eyeglasses. They're producing TikTok videos and YouTube pages. Now, what's going to happen to this country when that's what everybody wants to work from home, but they want to do you've got a computer, for what we're doing on this TikTok page, we've got, if we had to go and buy everything brand new
TikTok
or for YouTube, we've got everything for less than $1,000. If you had to go buy, you could get started for less than $1,000 on that one YouTuber that we listen to, he's got his computer and a $50 microphone and his laptop, and he's making 6 figures. Now, why should somebody invest in a pickup truck and tools to be a plumber or a mechanic or a carpenter or a builder when they're going to have to bust their ass and they're not going to make 6 figures working for somebody else? Not within a year, when you can spend $500, buy a laptop and a microphone, and within a year you can be making $100,000 from the comfort of your home and never change out of your pajamas. Which is more appealing? When the goal in this country is the dollar, it's not the satisfaction of work. It's the dollar amount that you make. We're judged in this country about your net worth as far as dollar amounts, not your net worth to society. And what you do. It's just teachers. When I could go to the university now and teach geology, and I would be lucky to make $60,000 a year until I put in enough time to get tenured, and then I might make $100,000 if I've got research projects that's bringing money in. But I'm 120,000 is about the top you're going to make as a tenured professor in a good program at a good university. I was making as a field geologist $1,600 a day at my top. Why would I want to be a teacher?
might be your passion.
Well, yeah, but when the society is set up to where you can't make it on the 60,000 or 100,000, that the whole starving artist thing starts coming back to mind. You could be a starving artist, but how many of the artists starve their way to fame and fortune? Not many. Most of them starve their way into an early grave. So it's just the incentives are all screwed up in this country. And that, I think that's the biggest problem is our moral compass. And I'm not talking religious moral, I'm talking social morality. Our moral compass is just totally screwed up in this country.
Loans, and you've got a skills gap of over 7 million good jobs that don't require a 4-year degree, and you got a government that's still lending money we don't have to kids who are never going to be able to pay it back to train them for jobs that don't really exist anymore. We got to get away from that tautology, I think, before we just start writing checks.
Well, we got to get away from see, there needs to be lines. I agree with you. Okay, I agree. I'm being the devil's advocate. So when we say something, we got to be able to defend ourselves. Why are we paying for a 4-year degree in recess? There are colleges that will give you a 4 years bachelor's degree in physical education, PE. You can get a 4-year degree to be a PE teacher.
But that also leads to being,
No, it's a PE teacher.
okay, but with what you call a recess degree, couldn't that person be like a personal trainer,
That's it,
fitness expert,
But there are limited job opportunities for these positions. And I know this firsthand because Lana's daughter went to a university. She got an accounting degree. Her boyfriend had a PE degree. He became a personal trainer at a gym. That's the best he could do. With her accounting degree, she became the regional manager for the gym.
Okay.
So why are we paying for degrees that do not benefit society in a way other than in frivolous ways? If a zombie apocalypse was to happen, why do we need PE teachers? Why do we need poets? I don't see, as far as the arts are concerned, I think that if you go into a liberal arts, that we should not pay for more than 4 years. If you go into the sciences, then they should pay up to 8 years. Because and actually, I question the full 4 years for a poet. Is if you can't learn the English language and how to write in 2 years, then you've got a problem. I don't, you learn poetry Shakespeare did not have a college degree. If Shakespeare did not need a college degree to become one of the greatest playwrights, then why do we need to be sending people to college to get a degree in English literature? A brain surgeon needs a degree to do his job. A poet doesn't. A nuclear physicist needs his degree to do his job. An artist doesn't. I do not believe that we should be paying for any degree beyond an associate's degree.
Artists need a degree. They need to learn brush strokes, the type of painting they're doing,
but what kind of food,
era that it's from.
But that doesn't put food on anybody's table but your own. That doesn't benefit anybody other than you. I mean, that's just my whole thing. I boil it down to that if what you're wanting to do if you're one of the first people that's going to be thrown off the island in a survival situation, then why are we paying for a college degree for you to just have something that we're just going to throw you off the island to begin with?
Oh no, I would have never got a degree.
But I'm just saying that
I'm just saying I'd have never gotten, because to me it holds no weight for nothing.
Yeah, I mean it doesn't. Do we need people writing stories and writing poems and painting pictures? Yeah, I guess. I'm not that type.
It's not an all in. It's not a end all job.
Yeah,
That's
I would not want to. I am not the type of person that would want to be known as I made my fortune writing fiction book that benefited society in no way whatsoever other than entertainment. If you want entertainment, a deck of cards will entertain a person. Jacks and a bow. I mean, why does entertainment does not hold such a high value in my mind that we should have a whole society based on entertainment? And our economic system in this society is almost based on healthcare and entertainment. Those are the two things that this society, that our economy is healthcare, entertainment, and finance. Not building houses, building cars, farming, making glasses. I mean,
we now have a customer service economy instead of an industrial one.
Yeah, and when
like we did in World War II.
When the zombie apocalypse comes,
a lot of people are fucked.
Yeah,
especially a lot of the millennials.
Yeah,
they're fucked.
Yeah,
because they so goddamn sensitive. It's freaking ridiculous. They stub a toenail. They need to file suit on somebody.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody owes them something. And it's just like that person got $200,000 in college. What the is their degree in? And
what school did she go to?
But what is she doing? $200,000. I mean, that's you better be a brain surgeon or something.
There's more.
But you know what I'm saying. I mean, if you got a $200,000 college degree in French literature, if you've got a PhD in French literature and you want the government to forgive your college, fuck no. I'm a taxpayer. Why should I pay for your degree in French literature? It benefits me not one iota. And I don't know a lot of people in this country who give a rat's ass about French literature other than people who went to school for it and then people who want to con other people didn't go into school for it. So I just, no, there's certain levels of stupid that should be avoided. And, I draw my line in a different place.
You talk about a skills gap, and many companies look at one. Also, businesses say they can't find people to work, and they'll train them. The help wanted ads are full. Nobody applies for work in restaurants.
The first obstacles we run into when we try and shrink the skills gap vis-a-vis will and enthusiasm, we run into stigmas and stereotypes and myths and misperceptions, and a long list of ideas and notions that keep kids, in many cases, from exploring opportunities that don't require a 4-year degree. We have to confront those things. We have to make a more persuasive case for the 6-figure welder, which is not a myth. He and she, they're real. We've trained nearly 1,200 of them through my foundation. We've got to get them out there as better examples of what can happen to a person who takes the time to learn a skill that's in demand. And then, forgive me, I know it sounds like old school Horatio Alger stuff, but applies themselves. There are millions of instances where the mastery of a skill has led to something that looks an awful lot like prosperity. And we have to do a better job of telling those stories, in my view. We also have to be mindful that when we talk about a skills gap today, what immediately happens is my buddies on the right look at that and say, well, the problem is you got a lazy gene in the species. And you got people who simply don't want to take the time to master the skill. My buddies on the left will say, well, there is no such thing as a skills gap. All the greedy, rapacious employers need to do is write a bigger check, and the supply and the demand will sort itself out. Both of these things miss the point if you look at it through the lens of will as well as skill. There's a larger problem that's keeping people out of these jobs, and it has nothing to do with money.
My foundation is giving away $1 million to people who want to learn a skill or master a trade. Does that sound like you?
What does it cost you to train that welder?
Not much. A welding certificate, depending on where you get it, can be a few thousand, up to $8,000 or $9,000. More expensive if you want to work on big machinery. My foundation isn't there to write a blank check. We offer work ethic scholarships because, to my knowledge, nobody else does. There are lots of scholarships for academic achievement or athletic achievement or artistic achievement. We wanted to do something that looked like the Dirty Jobs program I worked on for years. And we wanted to, find a kid who was willing to show up early, stay late, make a persuasive case for himself and so forth, or herself. Of the 1,200 or so people we've helped, that's about maybe $5-6 million we've awarded over the years. But very rarely has anybody gotten a full ride. I look for people who already have some skin in the game, who are maybe halfway through their process and have run into a struggle. And I want people that I can follow up with, John. This is the thing, for the first 5-6 years that I did this, I didn't have any, I didn't have any evidence other than the anecdotal evidence I saw on Dirty Jobs and in my own life. But now that I can circle back, 13 years into this thing, and find somebody who got a welding certificate. And some of those people now are making 6 figures welding in a nuclear power plant. But others picked up a plumbing certification and went on to get a heating and air conditioning thing, followed by an electrical contracting certification. And now they've got 4 or 5 vans and they employ 8 or 9 people. They've got mechanical contracting businesses. This happens all the time. And nobody really, in my view, has made a great case for the path that you take when you're in the skilled trades that so often leads to a small business and a thriving one at that.
It sounds great just becoming the welder. A couple $1,000s of training can bring you close to a $100,000 a year job.
Think about your own career in broadcasting. It's not too dissimilar from mine. When we went to college, I got a 4-year degree, liberal arts education, served me well, cost me about $8,000. Today, the same thing is about 90. But I approached my business, and I don't know you, but from what I've seen of you, it seems like you did the same thing. You're a jobber, you're a tradesman, and your toolbox might be different than that of a welder or a plumber, but we do what we do in this world, and we became proficient at very specific things. And then we embraced a kind of gig economy, a kind of freelance economy that nowadays is kind of taboo. I'm not sure why, but the approach to work, the blue collar trades don't have a corner on that kind of headspace. And it's a very valuable headspace, the freelancing space, the willingness to go to where the work is something else my foundation always looks for. Because it's not just a case now where the expectations of many college graduates involve getting the job of their dreams. They want the job of their dreams many times in the zip code where they happen to be living.
People used to move to where the jobs are. They're more reluctant to do that now.
Are you willing to move? Can you go to where the opportunities are? It's a real stumbling block, and I don't make light of it. Everybody I know who's really truly prospered in the trades has moved a couple of times. But if you can't pivot in your chosen field, then I'm afraid the math is pretty self-evident. You're going to have to hit the reset button. You're going to have to start over. But hey, you're going to have a hell of a story in 5 or 10 years. If you can't work in your chosen field, then you need to think about the reset button. You need to think about maybe not starting over, but at least clearing the slate. You have to be open to it. Investigate it now. See what's out there. Welding really is a thing. I know a lot of six-figure welders. Maybe that's not for you. Maybe it's heating, air conditioning, electric. There's so many areas in the construction trades. People are going to be craving you if you take the steps now to get prepared for that. I hate to sound like somebody's angry neighbor out on the porch, but what the hell, man? I mean, how do we get to California in the first place? How do we get across the country? The whole notion of spending your 20s and maybe into your 30s of going to where the opportunity is and following those opportunities as opposed to simply following your passion or your dream. That's a teachable thing. And we don't teach it the way we used to. But to me, the scariest divide in the country right now is between the people who are convinced that opportunity exists and those who are convinced that it doesn't. That has to change. And so that's what I'm focused on right now, just making a more persuasive case for the overall existence of millions of good jobs that, for whatever reason, have been largely ignored for the last 40 years. I just talked to a guy the other day, 29 years old, went through our program back about 8 years ago, no debt, $180,000 a year, working on big equipment up on the high plains in North Dakota. Second kid's on the way. Bought an F-250 in cash. This kid ought to be on a billboard as an example of what you can do without taking 80 grand of college debt and spending the first 20 years of your career digging out of it.
People saying everybody should go to college. And Michelle Obama did a rap video where one line is,
this is the cookie cutter advice I'm talking about. Never in the history of the world has a politician dispensed a single bit of advice that applied equally to everybody who was listening. Now, I don't blame her on the one hand. Politicians, they can address the needs of the individual. They have to connect with the fat part of the bat, right? They have to say the thing that they think is going to resonate with the most people. So maybe she truly believes that most people really should go to college. Now, to say that everybody should go to college, she doesn't know who's listening to that. She has no idea. I know that there are millions of people who should not go to college simply because they could. And whenever I say that, the pushback is intense because it sounds like an anti-education thing to say, but it's not.
College is not
I'm
for
not
everybody.
anti-education.
Trade schools are
My
great.
foundation.
Well, it's not just that, but it's just not. Okay, like when I was in college, in my cellular biology class, we had a student that had an IQ of 90. He came in and he had his caretaker with him. Actually, the caretaker was the one that was benefiting from the class. This student could not comprehend the class, but because of his disability and the way the government is set up, they could not deny him the opportunity of taking the class. So here is this individual with an IQ of 90 in a cellular biology class, and the class cannot go any faster than what he can keep up with. Because he has to be allowed in the class, he has to be allowed a voice in the class, and every time he had a question, we had to stop the class. He was allowed to ask his question, no matter how ignorant it was, and the instructor had to answer his question. This is where we're at in our education system and our government financing education. We have an individual that would not be allowed with any power to, he cannot function on his own. He lived in a group home. He had a caretaker that picked him up, brought him to school, took him back home, made sure he was on his medication, but this person was allowed to take a cellular biology class, a medical level, engineering level class. And when I was teaching, I had students that had taken my class 3 times to try to pass it. God bless them for having that gumption to want it, but our government was paying for every time they took that class. So I can understand how these people can get $200,000 in debt and have no skills, because the government, they don't draw a line someplace. Like, I agreed with you when you said, yes, there should be a line drawn. I was giving you the argument that I heard them give constantly on why there can't be a line. And as long as we allow them that voice, then there won't be a line, and we will have people with an IQ of 90 taking whatever classes they want to take at the government's expense. There's only so many chairs in that classroom. So some student was not allowed to be in that class that could have benefited not only themselves but society, because we had this individual who's living on the government dime, will spend their entire life on that government dime, and the government sending them to college and letting the college act as a daycare center. I mean, it just basically, that's all it was. But you would not, I don't think that you would understand the number of people like this that are at our colleges and universities that have no business being there. They're just taking classes that will not amount to anything, and the government's paying for them at the expense of somebody else that could use that class or use that money for a beneficial class. You know, if it was up to me, if for the physical trades, like Mike Rowe was saying, or the sciences, yeah, I think government should pay 100% of those if they're going to pay. But when it comes to the non-tangible arts, the stuff that does not put food on people's tables other than the people producing the painting or the poem, no, we're not going to pay 100% of that. Because you're not benefiting society other than through entertainment. So, if you're going to produce something tangible that has, long-lasting value other than a poem or a painting, then yeah, we'll finance you. But during the
Rabbit hole.
I know during the Depression, when they were putting everybody back to work, do you know we've got warehouses full of paintings because the government was paying people just to paint. Just make a picture, paint a picture and submit it, and we will buy it. The government has warehouses full of shit that looks like was done by kindergartners that they bought off of expiring artists during the Depression just so they could dole out money.
Paul.
But I mean, and then when he said he knows welders that are making, $180,000. Yeah, I got a brother-in-law that's a diesel mechanic, make good money. How many years did it take him to build up to that? When, like I was said earlier, you've got these kids now that are hey, you could do a TikTok or a YouTube page or Chatterbox or whatever,
Or for only or some shit like
yeah,
that.
and sit at home and make that kind of money within a year. Okay.
If you're good, yeah.
Oh, but then how long is that going to last? This bubble's going to pop. I don't know. Okay, we're at the end of our life cycle. Okay. Now's a good time this is a bubble, this entertainment, this YouTube, all of that. This is a bubble. It's going to burst. We're getting in on it, hopefully. If not, so what? But when the bubble pops, we'll be in a position where it doesn't matter to us. We're done anyway. But when you're 18, 19, 20 years old and you start out like this, and say this lasts for 10 years, and you spend your 20s and possibly 30s doing YouTube and TikTok, and then all of a sudden everything crashes and you have no skills, and there is no YouTube or TikTok, what are you going to do?
I don't know what they're gonna do.
No, I'm asking, what are they going to do? The only thing left is for them to go on the public dime, because they weren't smart with their money. They only looked for the immediate now, not what's going to be in the future. They didn't invest in their future. And that's the problem. We do not teach our children fiscal responsibility in school anymore. And we teach them that you can be whatever you want, you can do whatever you want, and you deserve to be happy. So I want to sit at home and play video games all day. So now you have YouTube channels that are dedicated to them playing video games and other people just watching them play video games. This just blows my mind. That people are making money off allowing other people watch them play video games. Mm-hmm. Now, what skills are they going to have when we don't have internet anymore because China's come over and bombed us or something?
We're very, very clear. If you don't have an education, you have no hope. But the idea that the best path for the most people is somehow the most expensive path? Well, come on. Follow the money. That's just crazy. How can the best path for the most people be the most expensive path? Or look at it another way. And let's assume she could flick her fingers and everybody did go to college. They borrowed whatever it took. They signed on the dotted line. And now everybody is armed with a degree. What in the world is special about that?
Nothing.
It becomes just as equivalent as a high school diploma.
Everybody dreams of being in the corner office.
Well, it was the same. Okay, with Lana, she was in respiratory medicine. When she first got into respiratory medicine, all you needed was an associate's degree to become a respiratory therapist. Associate's degree, and go and do your clinicals and everything. Mm-hmm. Well, now they are wanting everybody to have at least a bachelor's degree.
A master's is better, though. Yes, I know.
But to wipe people's nose, to suck snot, and to count breath. And that's what Lana says. She goes, "You are pricing this out of this skill trait out of existence, because you don't need a bachelor's degree to do most of the things that a respiratory therapist does. Yes, they need the associate's level, the medical, the pre-nursing and all that. They need that medical.
That's what Uncle Mark's son is.
But they don't need a freaking bachelor's degree.
Fats, he's a respiratory therapist.
Yeah. But
that's why he still live at home.
What?
Fats was smart.
Okay.
He had to go to school, get the bachelor's, become a respiratory therapist, but he lived at home, helped with the bills, had a side job, and took it. He didn't take out a whole, but he only took them out if he desperately needed them. But take out a whole bunch of school loans.
That's what Joshua was.
Fats was smart.
Well, that's what Joshua was. Joshua's got his bachelor's degree in environmental science, I believe, and he only took out student loans his senior year. He worked his way through, but it took him like 8 years to get a 4-year degree, but he paid for most of it out of his pocket.
Yeah. I don't know how long it took Fats, but yeah.
But yeah, respiratory therapists make damn good money.
So Fats was like, I'll pay, I think he still lives at home, but he pays bills like they do. I think they half him down the middle and pay off what he needs to pay off, but he banking his money. Yeah. Fats ain't even bought a new car. Fats got a old Honda. Yeah. He's like, no, that's not necessary. When I'm debt free, then I'll go into debt for the things I want. But I'm not going to get the things I want and try to pay for the things no. He was smart. I have to give facts that he was smart.
See, Lan always said the only reason why the Society of Respiratory Medicine started pushing for it because they wanted to make themselves. Well, we've got to.
They want to raise themselves up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you don't need that skill to do that. We were short of respiratory therapists, and yet they're making the requirements so high that these kids are going to, like I said, they have to take out loans. Why? This is the reason why our medical costs are so high because we're requiring people for what? They'd start out as a candy striper in the hospital
and work their way
up and then they became the nurses' aides and all that, and then they had to go to medical school to become the nurse, but they had that training under that. Well, now they don't do that anymore. You got to go directly to school. You have no practical training under your belt because you don't start as a candy striper and work your way up.
No, but if you you can start out like what are they called? CNAs.
But you got to go to school.
That's only like 4 weeks.
You still have to. It's
right.
What I'm getting at is that
they didn't have to go to school. They were OJT
on the job training.
Right, and see, I benefited because when I went to work for the state, they trained me there, and I didn't have to pay for it, and I got paid.
Yeah,
like a regular paycheck for going to the class, and pay for my testing and everything. And then CMA, they did the same thing. LPN, I paid for that myself. I wasn't getting a plus Pell Grant, but the rest of it I paid for myself. I wasn't finna.
Yeah.
No. And then you can go from LPN to RN, which is the cheapest route. It is cheaper, and that's sad. It's cheaper to go from LPN to RN than it is to go straight RN. It's cheaper. And that's how most of us did it. Step by step by step. Because you do this, you got this training under this. So this class right here, it's just a step up, so it's going to be easier for you. You do this, you got these two classes behind you. So when you go here, it's easier for you because you have this knowledge right here already. And to me, that's the best way to do it because you're reinforcing what you already know and learning.
You're working your way up.
Mm-hmm.
You're not
just going straight there.
Yeah, you have all this book knowledge, and then you go in, and practical application does not match the book. That's the reason why the old doctors that didn't go to medical school were the best doctors. The ones that went in as a kid, as an apprentice, working with the town doctor, and the town doctor trained him, and this is what you need to, like the old medicine man type thing, and they ended up being the best doctors because they had practical application. They didn't have this book smart. Well, theoretically it should, well, theoretically it doesn't work.
Exactly.
But nobody knows how to build the corner office. Our workforce works when it's balanced. And I don't know how many lawyers we need, how many accountants, how many welders, but I do know that we need a smattering of all of it. And the idea that the kid I described earlier, who's making 180 grand a year, loving life, 2 kids, no debt, that guy went straight from high school, straight through a certification program and to work. And he's balanced and he's smart and he's happy. And he also has something that you and I didn't have when we were in school. He's got this thing, right? He has access to 98% of all the known information in the world at his fingertips. I sat here 2 weeks ago and watched a lecture at MIT on my laptop for free. It was great, for free. I'm not comparing the college experience to sitting in my office watching lectures, but I am a little, because the content's basically the same. And if you have a curious mind and a welding certificate, well, there's no reason in the world not to assume you're not going to be educated and balanced and engaged in all things. I will send you a video of Chloe Hudson. I just did a graduation speech for all trade schools because they all invited me and I couldn't get to all of them. So I sat here and I did one. Chloe went through our foundation 3 or 4 years ago. She wanted to be a plastic surgeon. She crunched the numbers and was looking at a $400,000 debt by the time the dust settled. And she got cold feet at the last minute and decided, I'm going to weld. I'm going to learn to weld. She learned to weld. 4 years later now, she's up in New England somewhere. Same basic story, $130,000 a year, no debt, loves it.
Politicians talk about work like it's something you have to do, but it's more than a paycheck.
We've gone down a very slippery rhetorical road over the last 10 months. And we've talked a lot about education and what happens when you deem some forms of education higher, right? In a de facto way, everything else becomes lower or alternative. The same thing's happened here. And it's difficult for me to articulate this because Dirty Jobs was the granddaddy of essential working shows.
My name's Mike Rowe, and this is my job.
So everybody's been calling me for the last 10 months to weigh in on essential work. And my message has surprised a lot of people because I think that the dignity you're talking about is not limited to essentiality, if that's a word. We all need to feel that we move the needle in our chosen field. I don't care if you're a bartender or a trampoline maker, it doesn't matter. You need to feel connected to your work and to yourself. And that's what's been sucked out of the workforce. We just accidentally and rhetorically called 40 million people non-essential.
Yeah.
And then we proved it. We shut them down. We told them to sit quietly and wait for the all clear. And that's hollowed out the dignity. It's hollowed out the will. It's hollowed out the essence of millions of people. We have to be careful with our phraseology. It's not just, as we said from the beginning, it's not just about the money. Our identities are wrapped up in our work. Call somebody's work non-essential, you might as well call them the same.
You've been critical of some of the shutdowns. Now COVID is diminishing.
I wrote a lot about what happens when a safety first mentality is taken literally. And this is something I could talk about for hours, but on Dirty Jobs, we had an expression that we used to say safety third. It was our way of reminding each other to be careful, but it was also a way to remind ourselves that the unintended consequence of a safety first culture, especially on the job, will oftentimes lead to complacency. Mm-hmm. When somebody else tells you over and over and over, again and again and again, that they care more about your well-being than you do, then you eventually take your eye off the ball. And this happened to my crew and I on Dirty Jobs. You know, we shot 300 episodes, and after the first 100, we had sat through dozens of mandatory safety meetings. And the first couple seasons were interesting. Nobody got hurt, but by season 3, everything went wrong. Broken fingers, nothing serious, thankfully, but concussions and stitches and sprains and contusions, and I singed my eyelashes off in a blast furnace one day. And so we started saying safety third. In fact, here, you'll laugh at this, I actually put it on a face mask, one of these gaiters, and we've been selling these. Don't worry, I'm not going to turn this into a commercial, but for years, you know, safety third was a thing we said on Dirty Jobs, and now all of a sudden it struck me as the embodiment of what was going on in the early days of COVID, when people were desperate to be in compliance, but not necessarily out of danger. So I thought putting safety third on a piece of cloth that would allow me to walk into a bank or a grocery store or just go about my life, obviously it's not going to keep germs out, but it didn't matter because somewhere along the line, the masks were doing something else.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a long way of saying
it was a badge of compliance.
Shut down for a couple of weeks. Take safety first as a thing for a couple of weeks, and then take the temperature. You know, figure out what's going on. But you can't sustain that forever. And if you try, back to the unintended consequences of of shutting down an economy and deeming certain workers essential while others aren't. You can't just call somebody essential without implicitly suggesting that half the workforce is non-essential by definition.
And why the heck are you essential?
I'm not.
But you got labeled as essential along with doctors and firemen.
I live in California, so I don't have an easy answer for any of it. Podcasting was deemed essential. What you and I are doing right now has been deemed essential. I'm not going to argue that it's not essential.
I'll argue that. We're not essential.
Well, all right. Well, then how about this? Isn't everybody essential to someone, if even just themselves?
But it happened in California that way because Hollywood had lobbyists, and they got a special break for them.
You saw.
What I look at it, what's essential during World War II, what jobs did they say were essential enough that men were not sent overseas because they were needed here because that job required people to do? Those are the jobs that are essential. That's the standard that I would draw by. If we were in the middle of the zombie apocalypse, what jobs do we need taken care of right now to make sure that this society can maintain equilibrium and still fight off the zombies?
Sprinters, marksmen, lockpicks.
But podcasters and TikTok and social influencers,
Doctors, and shit like that. But
yeah, engineers, so we can develop more efficient ways of disposing of the
ex-military,
Walking Dead.
active duty military, and ex-military for defense.
Police,
Yes.
firefighters,
Yes.
emergency personnel, public safety,
First responders.
yeah, farmers.
Definitely.
And then actually we're going to have to be, well, I was just reading a thing that they were saying for these going to Mars. What is the biggest risk of going to Mars? Food. The scientists said, you don't realize if we do not have a way that we can guarantee, we can send people to whatever planet we want. They'll just end up eating each other. So, I mean, food security is a number one concern that this planet should be working on, not sending people to school for cosmetology or something. You know, a pretty corpse doesn't do a whole lot of people any good. I'm just saying.
The woman at the Pineapple Grill, right? She built an outdoor dining area and they shut her down, you know, and the next day, right there, right next to her, you know, hundreds of people on a TV or a movie set were sitting cheek to jowl. Look, the real answer to your question, from my perspective, is not the obvious damage that happens to somebody's personal economy when you tell them they can't work. It's the less obvious fallout that happens to people when you forbid them from doing the thing that defines them. Our identity is so wrapped up in our work, and so it's not just a financial problem that the lockdowns represent. It's a hollowing out of who we are, and you see that happening in virtually every vocation to some degree. It's happening with our schools, keeping the schools closed for this long. But the big thing that I think is happening on top of all of it is it's the hypocrisy of it. That business with Gavin Newsom up at the French Laundry, that's not a small thing. And when the government is asking people to go to extraordinary lengths and trust them just on the basis of their words and their goodwill, and then we see just so many examples of rules for me but not for thee, or is it the other way around? Whatever it is, people will forgive ignorance, you know, we'll forgive stupidity in our leaders, but it's really hard to forgive hypocrisy when it's that unapologetic and rank.
Just on the subject of safety third, across the country from you, my governor says, if everything we do saves just one life, I'll be happy.
His exact quote, and I remember this, John, because it literally, it was the thing that drove me to the computer to drag the whole safety third manifesto back into the lockdowns. He said, no measure, no matter how draconian, can be deemed ill-advised if it saves but a single life. And I thought, I mean, come on. If that was really the goal, well, let's knock the speed limit down to 10 miles an hour. Let's make cars out of rubber. Let's make everybody wear a helmet, and let's eliminate left turns. There, 40,000 lives saved like that. It's easy. It's easy. I can save millions of lives. You know, just if I were king of the world and I had a pen and you had to do what I tell you, saving lives is easy.
What's wrong with that logic?
Because the goal of living is not to merely stay alive. Cars are a lot safer in the driveway. Ships are a lot safer when they don't leave harbor. And people are a lot safer during a pandemic when they sit quietly in their basements waiting for the all clear. But that's not why cars, ships, and people are on the planet. We're challenged now to figure out how to live in a dangerous world. But guess what? That's always been the case.
The world's always
There's
been
a terrific
dangerous.
essay by C.S. Lewis called Living in the Atomic Age. Somebody asked him in 1948, how are we supposed to live in a world with atomic weapons when everything could be over like that? And he said, among other things, the same way we lived in a world when the Viking could land on the shore 1,000 years ago and rape all your women and hack everybody to bits. It's no different. It's a dangerous world.
Yep.
And this is a new thing. But he said, let's not fool ourselves by the mystery of the newness. It's not novel. It's just different. And it's one more thing. And we'd be well advised to understand where the risks are. And then we'd be better advised to go about the business of living the only life we have, cautiously, but not in fear, nor in complacency.
And I don't think we know that people are safer staying at home. Domestic violence is up.
We don't know what's going to happen to a
Suicides
kid
are
in
up.
second or third grade, suddenly robbed of 10 months of socialization. We just don't know.
Besides all the psychological, these children are now, fear has been drilled into their heads. And fearing something intangible. It wasn't like during the Blitz in Britain, when these children were daily bombing raids. That's a tangible fear. But to be afraid of a virus that everybody around you is the enemy, and you have to stay sick. Think of the psychological damage that has been done to these children, especially the children that already had some kind of psychological disorder to begin with, or might have been borderline, and now this just pushed them over the edge. Okay, my reply to him, he said, any measure, no matter how draconian, if it saves one life, you can't. What about if it destroys one life? Any law or measure that destroys a single life should be invalid by. If saving a life is worth everything, then let's look at it conversely. Then taking a life is just as evil. So if you have a law designed to save a life, but it takes a life also, how is it any better than?
It balances.
I don't think so. Saving one life at the expense of 1,000
No.
doesn't balance.
But we're going to find out.
Well, it's just what I was going to say earlier, talking about the student loans. What about those of us who had businesses that were shut down because of COVID? Restaurants were shut down. We still had to make banknotes. We still had to, we were still expected to pay payroll, or at least we had to pay the liability insurance. We had to make all our insurance payments.
Utility payments.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Why doesn't if the government shut us down? As far as I'm concerned, the government should have been paying our monthly bills. Now, if you're going to force me to shut down, but still require me to make my banknote payments and all that, you should be doing it. It's not my fault I'm not
And
in
quarterly
business.
taxes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, no, that's bullshit.
And when we do, some geek, some nerd with a bigger brain than mine is going to look back, and we're going to assign a cost to safety. And it's going to be high.
A TV anchor who was condemning people who protested against strict COVID restrictions.
You're slapping the faces of the people who are the healthcare workers who put their lives on the line every day because you want a haircut, you want to go play golf.
Probably plays well, you know, if the election's the next day and you're out there and you can prove that you care more about my well-being than the other guy, well, that's a point in your column. But back to my point, do you really want to argue with me that you care more about my well-being than I do?
Well, no, he says he cares about other people's well-being because you might give somebody else COVID.
Right. And I might fall asleep on the road and cross the yellow line, and something bad might happen there as well. There's a whole long list of things. They're all called accidents, right? And I'm not minimizing it. I'm not trying to sweep it under the rug. This thing is real, and it's dangerous. It's dangerous as hell. But whenever somebody starts telling you that your safety is their responsibility, they're either selling you something, running for office, or just yanking your chain. It's not for anyone else to do that, especially with the amount of certainty that we've heard. And again, not to sound all tinfoil capped about it, but certainty is an amazing thing, John. And I was just saying to a friend the other day, whatever it is you think of Dr. Fauci, forget the politics of it. Go back and play the tape when he talks about how masks really are no big deal and don't work. And then look at more recent video of him saying the exact opposite. He sounds the same. He sounds certain. Everybody sounds so incredibly certain. And I write about this a lot because I'm a narrator. I don't know much, but I get paid to narrate stories about the universe and dinosaurs and all kinds of interesting things for all kinds of interesting nonfiction channels. I get paid to sound certain, and I don't know my ass from a hot rock. And I'm no different in that regard than a journalist or a politician or a scientist or a doctor. All of us have the capacity to sound incredibly certain, but certainty and accuracy are not the same thing.
What do you need to be an expert?
Talk longer and louder than everybody else.
Talk longer and louder than anybody else. That's all you need to be an expert.
So I'm just hyper wary of certainty and earnestness and experts. If we've learned anything from this thing, it's that the initials after your name don't necessarily make you a genius.
Bingo. Yeah, like I said, it's just this. The answers are too complex to be trying to solve instantly, and that's what everybody wants. They want an instant solution. The left does not want to gradually move towards something and keep everything in equilibrium in the process. They want an instantaneous shift in society and societal norms, and you can't do that because it throws everything out of equilibrium and out of balance, and then you have chaos. Move things gradually, but they don't want that. And there's I don't know what the answer is. I just know that we're not heading in the right direction. So anyway, let's end this. I'm going to have to do some serious editing on this one. But it was fun. And you hammed it up.
Really? Really?
Yeah, you hammed it up.
It's breakfast.
All right. Anyway, love you guys. We're going to end this one up. And remember, enjoy how bad it is today, because it'll be worse tomorrow. Love y'all.
Definitely.